after the webinar. Thanks, Chantrell. And also, if you have any questions during the webinar, please put those questions in the chat. And at the end of the webinar, we will go back and answer those questions for you. Let's get started. In 2021, CCCF began awarding general operating support grants. And our general operating support grants provide unrestricted operations funding to support organizations' missions. With these grant funds, it is our hope that the organizations that we are supporting will be able to respond to community needs faster and more effectively. Our general operating support grants do provide multi-year unrestricted operations funding to eligible organizations, and I will review those eligibility requirements in a moment. And nonprofits who receive the general operating support grant will receive up to $10,000 per year for 3 years, and that totals $30,000 for the duration of the grant. The general operating support grants are made possible through the Central Carolina Community Foundation Community Impact Fund and other field of interest support dollars as needed. And we are very grateful to our donors who help make these grants possible. So the objectives of the General Operating Support Grant are to invest in communities that have been historically underinvested in by philanthropy. It's to provide resources to those organizations who are trusted by, connected to, and rooted in community. They help to cultivate trust and relationships between CCCF and nonprofit organizations within our 11-county service area. And we also hope to increase the capacity of nonprofit organizations to better serve their communities and to sustain high-quality services beyond the 3-year grant period. We hope to not only provide funds through the General Operating Support Grant, although that is a big part of it, but we also see this as an opportunity to further engage with nonprofits, especially those who we may not engage with on a larger scale, to help build relationship with these organizations, and also to hopefully prepare organizations for other opportunities at the foundation and beyond. So what do we fund? In general, our General Operating Support Grant, like I mentioned earlier, support organizations and communities that have been historically or traditionally underserved by philanthropy. Grantees will be selected based on the following criteria. That's alignment with CCCF's mission, values, and priorities, connection to and representation by the communities that they serve, having proven outcomes in addressing a community need, showing an opportunity to increase that nonprofit's capacity, and a history of collaborative work in philanthropy. So now we're going to talk about the eligibility requirements for the General Operating Support Grant. First, you must be a 501c3 and have that status for at least 2 years. And that's determined by the determination letter. And we ask that those letters be dated no later than January 31st, 2023. So having your nonprofit status for at least 2 years, having an organizational budget under $450,000, and that's based on your prior year fiscal budget. So the budget should be under $450,000. Having at least one paid employee who dedicates a minimum of 20 hours a week to the organization. And this does not include a consultant within that or a contractor. We're really looking for an organization that has at least that part-time staff. There are other engagement opportunities with the General Operating Support Grant, such as quarterly meetings and different things like that. So we want to make sure that those organizations who are funded have the capacity to do those things. Having applied for and received a grant from CCCF in the past 4 years, and the measure that we're using for that is from July 1, 2021 to present, having applied for and received one of our grants within the past 4 years. And the reason for that is being that these are unrestricted funds, we do want to make sure that they're going to nonprofits that we have some sort of relationship with, in the relationship of reporting with and different things like that. So just making sure that within the past 4 years, you have received a grant from CCCF. Location in our 11-county service area, and that's based on your EIN address. So we want to make sure that you have a physical location and staff in one of our counties in the 11 county service area. And then lastly, registration on Millings Gives. Some of you may be in the process of getting that registration complete, but make sure that you are registered or in the process of being registered on our Millings Gives site. So once, if an organization is funded, here are the expectations for grantees to receive a general operating support grant. First, expensing the funds annually. So we do ask that the $10,000 per year is spent within that grant year. Completing an annual report, and that will be on our grant portal. Attending quarterly grantee meetups or grantee meetings. We do engage with the grantees throughout the process of this grant, so making sure that you and your staff are able to attend those meetings. Registering your nonprofit on millingsgives.org. Using the funds towards operation and administrative costs. Although these are unrestricted funds, we are making them unrestricted to operations and administrative costs. So this is not designed to be a programmatic grant, but the idea is that these funds will help build your organization's capacity through supporting your operations and administrative costs. And then lastly, just maintaining regular communication with CCCF staff throughout the grant period and beyond. So now I will go through the application. All applications are submitted through our grant portal. And the application is not designed to be burdensome, but there are several questions that you will need to answer. Ideally, most of the information that you see we're asking for within the application should be readily available to your organization, because typically these are things that an organization would include in an annual report. So it'll be a matter of collecting these and being able to present them concisely within the application. So here's what you will see initially when you log on to complete the application. That first line is just making sure that you are applying for the general operating support grant. And then the next part will be the eligibility requirements. So you will need to complete that as soon as you start the grant application. And all of those boxes would need to be checked in order for your organization to be eligible for the grant. So we've listed all of those requirements. If you're not able to check all those boxes, unfortunately, your organization wouldn't be eligible to apply at this time. But before moving on to through your application, making sure you're able to check all of those boxes. And if not, then you would need to abandon the request. And once again, your organization would not be eligible at this time. So as you move further along in the application, there will be a question about your organization's primary service area, and those choices for that question aligns with the Millings Gives category. So if you work towards animals, if you're a youth serving organization, or whatever category you check on Millings Gives, that typically should correspond with your organization's primary service area. Your organization's website, your official mission statement. This is a question that we pulled from Candid, but this should be your official mission statement, whatever that is. For the project name, you will just enter GOS FY25. All of these grant applications will have the same project name, the county of the physical location of your organization, and the population that your organization serves, but it's where you have a measurable impact. So if you serve a couple of people in the county, if you don't view it as a measurable impact, you wouldn't list that county, but any counties that you have a measurable impact. And then the number of your full-time and part-time staff is also asked. Once again, that's not referring to consultants or contractors, but those are folks that you actually have on staff with your organization. And we also asked about volunteers. You'll see a question on there about unduplicated volunteers that you have for the previous year. So next is where we ask about your projects and services, your accomplishments and impact. This just helps us learn a little more about your organization. We are using an example from Children's Trust here. So once again, this is from annual report. So for the name of the project and service, they would have put Triple P as the name of the project and service. And then next, they give a description of what that particular project or service is. And then lastly, when we look at the outcomes, they've served 1,380 parents and children. So you can list that, you can bullet that out if you like, or you can give a summary, and then they've also included the number of families. So, just keeping it concise, being able to provide that information, but you have to include at least one of your key programs and services, but you have an opportunity to include up to 4. So, as you move through the application, we will get additional information about your client description. So thinking about the primary populations that your organization serve, just giving us some demographics on that population. Are those populations here? And then community partners, who are your key community partners, your more current community partners that you work with. There is a question about your board of directors and staff, and we're asking, how does your organization's board of directors or your organization staff reflect the clients you serve? So that answer will vary across organizations, but thinking about your board and your staff, and how does that reflect the community that you're serving? Next, we will ask about the community needs. So what is the need or needs that your organization is addressing? And how have you decided or determined that that's a need? So, if you've completed a needs assessment or anything like that, but what is the need that you're addressing, and how has that need been determined? And then next, we're asking you about an organizational opportunity. So providing up to 2 opportunities that you see for your organization over the next 1 or 3 years. And these are really sort of getting you to look forward and to share that what are some key opportunities or possibilities that you see for your nonprofit over the next couple of years. And then we would like to know about an accomplishment. So thinking about the past 12 months, what would you say is the most proudest accomplishment for your organization or your nonprofit? And then under the additional information, there's a question: provide 3 words of what your community or your clients would use to describe your organization. So just sharing whatever 3 words you think your clients or your community would use to describe your nonprofit. So that's the area of the application where you're just providing additional information about your organization and the community you serve. So the next part of the application is the financial statement, and here you will share your financials. So we're asking for your total income, and that's for the previous fiscal year. I know fiscal years vary. For example, our fiscal year is from a July 1 through a June 30th, so we would report on the previous fiscal year. So if it's 200,000, you would include 200,000. And then you would also include your organization's expenses, thinking about that previous fiscal year. And then in the income breakdown, we have several categories for you to include how your income was broken down. Once again, generally information you would find in the annual report. So if there's an area where you haven't received any funds, just put 0 for the income. And then you also need to calculate what percentage of your budget that is. And then at the bottom, you will get your totals, but you will have to calculate those individual percentages. So looking at federal dollars, any state dollars, any funds from foundations, contributions or donations, those are considered individuals. And then any earned income. And then there's a other category if there are other forms of income. And then we will move on to any expenses your organization had. Once again, this number should equal that section that you saw on the previous page that asked about your organization's expenses. So you will include your personnel expenses, your program expenses, fundraising expenses, and then your general or administrative expenses. Just like the previous section, you will calculate what those percentages are, and it will total those numbers at the bottom. And then you also see there's for you to list any major donors that you've had. And each organization will determine what is considered a major donor. You can give that brief description within that question. It's for you to enter text. But whatever your organization identifies as a major donor, you will provide a list. There's a question for you to provide a list of those major donors. So uploads, we do ask for 2 uploads within the application. One is your organizational staffing structure, And the second is your list of board of directors and their, or your board members and their occupations. In the next two slides, I'll show you a couple of examples of those. So you don't have to use this template. You can use whatever format you have, but this is just an example of what we're looking for when we ask about your staffing structure. So just providing us a list of your staffing structure at your organization. And then next, here's a list of board of directors. So including those names and the occupations of your board of directors. Once again, you don't have to use this format. This is just an example, but we are asking for a list of your board of directors for your organization. So the last part of the application, there is a section for you to include any additional information that you think is important to share. So if it's something you feel like you need to further explain that you included in your application, or just anything that you think is really important for the committee to know. If there's nothing, you can leave this blank, but if there's something that you feel you need to add, whether it's to further explain or to get more insight into your application, you can do that in this section. And we also ask how many hours it took you to complete the application. So you can track that and keep track of that and add those number of hours within that question. So for the review process, round one, applications are due at 11:59 on January the 31st. And then there is initial due diligence, and the CCC staff will conduct an application review of the applications, and then applications will move forward for the next round for the review committee, but organizations will be notified of their round one application status on March 19th, or around about March 19th. But once again, that's a staff review, and then there's also a review committee that will review the applications. Round two of the applications are interviews with the General Operating Support Group Support Grant Review Committee. The date for those interviews are April 9th. They tend to be about 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how many organizations are invited for an interview. So please save that day. And if you're invited to participate in the interview, we will give you your window of time. Normally we bring the committee together in person. However, the organizations will join virtually. We do ask that you bring either a board member or one of your key programs people to participate in that interview with you. So that will be on April 9th, and then organizations will be notified around April 30th on the status of the grant. And then there's usually a grant kickoff webinar to just explain reporting and other logistics related to the grant. And the funding period for the General Operating Support Grants will begin June 1, 2025.
Jermise, we have a question in regards to the round.
Yes.
One of the questions was, can you share more detail on the rounds? Do you pick a certain number of applicants to advance forward?
Yeah, so that first round with the initial staff review, about 20 will move forward to the review committee. So they will narrow that to about 20 applications, or no more than 20. And, we're not sure how many we will get. The eligibility has changed from the past few years. I'm not sure how many we get, but about 20 of those do move forward. And that is it for now. Here's my contact information. It's also included on the website. I believe most of you probably have my contact information, but if at any point throughout the application period you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I did receive a couple of applications of folks trying to confirm when is their last grant. One of the easiest ways is looking on your grant portal, because that's around about the time that we moved over to the new system. There may be a few from 2021 that I would need to go find for you to see if your organization was funded in the past 4 years. But if you have a grant on the portal that has been awarded, that could be a good indicator that you fall in that time frame. So now I will answer any additional questions if you have them.
We have one more in the chat. The question is, we have a fiscal year that ends in 5/31. Is the budget requirement based on the current year budget, the current year actuals, or the projected 2025 budget?
It's your past fiscal years. So not the current fiscal year, but it would be your past fiscal year that ended last May. Any other questions? Well, thanks everyone. Once again, this information session has been recorded and we will share it to everyone who's registered. We'll probably post it on the website as well. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I look forward to receiving your applications. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.